You want me to what? Grandmaster Zixtal of the 7th House of Catherine stared at his adjutant with all 4 of his eyes, mandibles twitching in what passed for bewilderment among his species. "Challenge the human to a duel, sir," repeated Sub-Commander Valtok, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the light of the 3 moons overhead. It's complicated. Complicated? Zixtal's secondary arms crossed while his primary ones gestured expansively at the ceremonial dueling grounds around them. "I am the undefeated champion of 17 star systems. I have mastered every known form of ritual combat in the greater arm of the galaxy. What could possibly be complicated about challenging a mere human?" Valtok's antennae drooped slightly, the Catharan equivalent of an embarrassed cough. "Well, sir, that's just it. The human, he's been asking about you, specifically." Oh. Now that was interesting. Zixtal's curiosity began to override his initial indignation. "And why, pray tell, would a human be interested in me?" He says, and I quote, "I heard this bug dude thinks he's hot shit with a sword, and I want to see if he's actually any good or just beating up space chickens." There was a long moment of silence, broken only by the soft humming of the antigrav generators that kept the dueling platform suspended above the capital city of New Cathar. Finally Zixtal spoke, his translator struggling to maintain the proper tone of affronted dignity. "Space? Chickens?" "I took the liberty of researching the terms, sir. They appear to be flightless avians that humans breed for food. The comparison seems unflattering." "Unflattering?" Zixtal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sure sign of agitation. "It's an insult, a clear violation of diplomatic protocol. I should have this human arrested for—" "Actually, sir," Valtok interrupted, bringing up a holographic display from her wrist computer. "According to the new Terran-Catharan Cultural Exchange Treaties, Section 47, Subsection 12, Paragraph 9. They're allowed to do that. It falls under something called trash talk." Trash talk? Apparently it's a crucial part of their martial traditions. The human embassy sent over quite an extensive document about it. There's an entire subsection on something called throwing shade. Zixtal felt a headache building in his primary brain cluster. Fine, where's this human now?" "He's waiting in the visitor's pavilion. Says his name is Dave. Just Dave." "What do you mean, just Dave? Surely he has some titles, honors, accomplishments?" He says, again, I quote, "Nah, man, Dave's cool. Everyone knows Dave." Zixtal chittered in frustration. "This is absurd. I am a Grand Master of the 7th House. I don't have time to entertain every random human who—" "He also said that if you're too scared to fight him, he understands. Something about not wanting to embarrass you in front of your homies?" The antigrav platform vibrated slightly as Zixtal's foot stamped down. "Bring him here, now." Dave turned out to be unremarkable, as far as humans went. Average height, average build, wearing what appeared to be cargo shorts and a t-shirt with some kind of ancient Earth text on it. "Kiss the cook," according to Valtok's translator. He was carrying what looked like a gym bag, and had the relaxed posture of someone waiting for a bus rather than preparing for ritual combat. "Sup?" Dave raised a hand in what Zixtal's cultural database identified as a casual greeting. "Nice place you got here. Very feng shui. I am Grand Master Zixtal of the 7th House of Catharan, Blade Singer of the 3 Moons, champion of—" Yeah, I read your space LinkedIn profile," Dave interrupted, unzipping his gym bag. "Look, I'm gonna be straight with you. I've been following your career, and I gotta say, I'm not impressed." Zixtal's mandibles clicked so hard they nearly stripped a gear in his translator. "Not impressed? I mean, sure, you've won a lot of fights, but let's be real. Most of the species you've beaten don't even have bones. No offense to the gelatinous cube people of whatever system, but that's like being proud of winning a boxing match against a bowl of Jell-O." Valtok quickly stepped between them as Zixtal's color began shifting to the ultraviolet range, a sure sign of mounting rage. "Sir, please remember the diplomatic implications." "Oh, I'm remembering them," Zixtal said through clenched mandibles. "I'm also remembering that under those same treaties, I have the right to challenge this Dave, to formal combat." "That's the spirit." Dave grinned, pulling something from his gym bag that made both Catherine take an involuntary step back. "I was hoping you'd say that. Is that—" Valtok's antennae went rigid with shock. "Is that a human weapon? This?" Dave held up what appeared to be a curved metal blade approximately 1 meter in length. Nah, this is just a katana. Well, okay, technically it's a sword. Well, okay, technically it's a really sharp piece of metal that goes swoosh. But mostly it's a katana. You can't use that, Zixtal protested. Our dueling traditions require the use of energy weapons, plasma blades, quantum edges. Yeah, about that. Dave gave the sword an experimental swing that made an actual swoosh sound through the air. I checked the rules. They say you have to use energy weapons because most species can't handle physical blades without, dying. But humans? We're kind of weird about sharp things. Got an exemption and everything. This is outrageous. I refuse to— Article 5 of your own dueling code. Dave interrupted again, somehow managing to look both bored and amused. Once a challenge is issued, neither party can refuse without forfeiting their title. But hey, if you want to give up your whole undefeated champion thing because you're scared of a little piece of metal, I totally get it. No judgment. Zixtal's color shifted from ultraviolet to infrared so quickly that Valtok's optical sensors had trouble adjusting. Valtok, he said with dangerous calm. Prepare the dueling circle, and bring me my blade. Word spread quickly through the capital. By the time the duel was ready to begin, the floating platforms around the arena were packed with spectators. Catharan nobles jostled for position with visiting diplomats, while news drones buzzed overhead, broadcasting the event across 17 systems. The rules are simple, Valtok announced, her voice amplified by the arena's acoustic enhancers. The first to yield or become incapacitated loses. Death strikes are forbidden. The arena's defensive fields will prevent any fatal blows. Quick question. Dave raised his hand like a student in class. What counts as incapacitated for your species? Because, you guys can regrow limbs and stuff. Loss of primary motor functions, severe damage to more than 2 limbs, or disruption of either brain cluster. Valtok replied automatically, then did a double take. Wait, how did you know about our regenerative capabilities? Wikipedia? Dave shrugged. Also, I watched all your fights on Space YouTube. Speaking of which, he turned to address one of the news drones directly. Hey, if anyone's watching this at home, don't try this stuff. I'm what you'd call a trained professional, sort of. I mean, I've watched a lot of anime. Enough! Zixtal's patience, already stretched thin, finally snapped. He ignited his quantum blade, the weapon humming to life with a sound that made several spectators' teeth vibrate. The blade was a masterpiece of Catharan engineering, a ribbon of pure energy that could cut through battleship armor, contained within a field that gave it the approximate mass and handling of a physical sword. Oh, neat, Dave said, examining the weapon with genuine interest. It's like a lightsaber had a baby with a Tesla coil. Does it come in other colors? Or is purple like a status thing? This blade, Zixtal said through gritted mandibles, has been passed down through my house for 17 generations. It has tasted the blood of champions from 100 worlds. Has it though? Dave interrupted, idly spinning his katana in a way that should have been physically impossible. Because I was reading up on quantum blade technology, and this model only came out like 20 years ago. Also, it doesn't actually taste blood, because it cauterizes wounds instantly. Also, you might want to check your power coupling. It's humming about half an octave too high, which means the containment field is probably— Zixtal charged. The quantum blade moved faster than most organic eyes could follow, its arc perfect, its trajectory calculated by generations of Catharan blademasters to be virtually unstoppable. It was a killing stroke turned into an art form, the kind of attack that had made Zixtal's reputation across 17 systems. Dave stepped aside and stuck out his foot. There was a moment, just a moment, where time seemed to slow down. Zixtal felt his center of gravity shift unexpectedly. His secondary arms windmilled comically as his primary arms tried to correct his balance. The quantum blade's containment field buzzed in protest at the sudden movement. Then physics reasserted itself, and the Grandmaster of the 7th House of Catharan face-planted onto the dueling platform with a sound like someone dropping a bag of silverware. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the news drones seemed to hold their mechanical breath. Valtok's voice cracked slightly. Did you just trip the Grandmaster? What? No! Dave looked offended. That was a carefully calculated tactical reposition utilizing environmental factors to create an advantageous shift in momentum vectors. He paused. Okay, yeah, I totally tripped him. Zixtal rose slowly, his exoskeleton flushing with colors that weren't supposed to be visible in this dimension. You dare. Oh good, you're up. Dave settled into what looked like an actual fighting stance for the first time. Now we can start for real. Unless you want to yield, No shame in it. Well, okay, there's probably some shame in it, considering everyone's watching, but... The Grandmaster attacked again, this time with a complex series of strikes that had overwhelmed champions across the galaxy. The quantum blade hummed and sparked as it wove patterns in the air, each cut precisely calculated to slip past any possible defense. Dave met every strike with his katana, the ancient steel ringing against the energy blade in ways that violated several laws of physics. He was moving with an efficiency that made Zixtal's perfect form look almost clumsy in comparison. And worse, far worse, he was still talking. See, your problem is... Clang. You're fighting like someone who learned from tutorials. Ping. Instead of actual experience. Swoosh. Like, yeah, that sequence looks cool. Clang. But it leaves you open on the left. Ping. Assumes your opponent only has 2 arms. Whoosh. And honestly... Clang. Kind of telegraphs everything you're going to do. Stop! Talking! Zixtal was using all 4 arms now, his blade moving so fast it left afterimages in the air. Make me, Dave grinned, and then did something that made several physics professors in the audience clutch their heads in pain. The katana seemed to blur, not in the way energy weapons did, but in a purely mechanical way that shouldn't have been possible. It met the quantum blade at exactly the right angle to catch the power coupling that Dave had mentioned earlier. There was a sound like an angry cat being run through a synthesizer, and Zixtal's ancient and honored weapon turned off. Yeah, Dave said apologetically as the quantum blade sputtered and died. That power coupling thing I mentioned? Kind of important. You really should have had that checked out. Zixtal stared at his deactivated weapon in disbelief. This is impossible. You cheated. You must have used some kind of technology. Nope, Dave held up his katana. Just good old-fashioned steel. Well, okay. Technically, it's a high-carbon folded steel blade with some modern molecular engineering to prevent metal fatigue, because I'm not crazy enough to use actual ancient Earth steel against energy weapons. But basically, just a sharp piece of metal that goes swoosh. But... Zixtal's translator seemed to be having trouble keeping up with his incredulity. You're just a human! Yeah, Dave's grin widened. Funny thing about humans, we've been hitting each other with sharp pieces of metal for most of our history. Like, tens of thousands of years. We got pretty good at it. You guys? He gestured at the quantum blade. You invented energy weapons before you figured out basic metallurgy. Don't get me wrong, very impressive technology. But maybe don't challenge the species that turned hitting stuff with other stuff into an art form? The Grand Master of the 7th House of Catharin, Blade Singer of the 3 Moons, and undefeated champion of 17 star systems looked at his broken weapon, then at the human with the ancient weapon design that had just effortlessly defeated his supposedly superior technology. I yield, he said quietly. The crowd exploded. Credits changed hands as bets were settled. News drones zoomed in for close-ups. Vkr'lak looked like she was having an existential crisis. Hey, no hard feelings, Dave said, already packing his katana back into his gym bag. You're actually pretty good. Just, maybe spend some time learning the basics before relying on the fancy energy stuff. I know a great dojo back on Earth if you're interested. Zixtal's translator struggled to find the right words. You would teach me? Sure. I mean, that's kind of why I came here in the first place. Well, that and to win some bets. Speaking of which, Dave pulled out a communicator. Hey, Jenkins. Yeah, it worked exactly like we thought. Uh-huh. Yeah. Go ahead and put it all on the Arcturian markets tanking when the weapons manufacturers realize their stuff just got beat by what's basically a fancy kitchen knife. As Dave wandered off, still chatting about market manipulations and betting odds, Vkr'lak approached her shell-shocked superior. Sir, are you all right? Zixtal watched the human who had just casually upended his entire worldview, along with several laws of physics and most of the local economy. Vkr'lak, he said slowly, I believe I need to update our combat training protocols, and possibly invest in some metal stocks. Yes, sir. And sir? Yes? Should I cancel your appointment to demonstrate our superior combat technologies to the human delegation next week? Vkr'lak? Yes, sir. Shut up and find me a metallurgy teacher. 3 months later, a video went viral across 17 star systems. It showed the former Grandmaster Zixtal, wearing what appeared to be a karate gi modified for his non-human anatomy, carefully practicing basic sword forms with a traditional steel blade. The instructor watching him was immediately recognizable. Looking good, Dave's voice could be heard off camera. Now remember, It's not about looking cool or having the fanciest weapon. It's about hitting the other guy with your sharp metal thing before they hit you with their sharp metal thing. Or in your case, sharp metal things because, 4 arms. Which is totally cheating, by the way. I believe the human term is gitgud. Zixtal's attempt at earth slang made his translator glitch slightly. Now you're getting it. Okay, let's work on that footwork, and try not to trip this time. That was one time. It's been viewed about 6 billion times across the galaxy, sir. You're never living it down. Back in her office, Vkr'lak watched the training session with a mixture of amusement and resignation. Her desk was piled with reports about the dramatic shifts in the galactic weapons market, requests for information about human martial arts, and, most worryingly, a growing number of applications from other species wanting to learn what they were now calling ancient human combat techniques. Her computer pinged with a new message. She opened it and immediately wished she hadn't. "Sir?" She called up the video feed to the training room. "We may have a situation. Kind of busy here." Zixtal was in the middle of a complex kata that involved all 4 of his arms moving in different directions. "What is it?" "The hive mind of Beta Centauri just issued a challenge. Apparently they've been studying human nunchucks and want to prove their superiority over, and I quote, primitive kinetic weapons." There was a crash as Zixtal lost his concentration and nearly dropped his sword. Dave's laughter could be heard echoing through the feed. "Oh man." The human wiped tears from his eyes. "Please tell me someone's recording this. Jenkins is going to make so much money on the betting pools." "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" Vkr'lak accused. "This was your plan all along." "Plan? Nah," Dave waved dismissively. "I just figured if one species could get so hung up on fancy energy weapons, others probably did too. And you know what they say. The best way to advance galactic civilization is to convince everyone they're doing it wrong, then profit from the chaos." I don't believe that's a real saying. It is now. Speaking of which, hey Zixtal, want to learn about this cool human thing called shorting stocks? Vkr'lak watched as her former superior, one of the most dignified and respected warriors in Catharan society, eagerly sat down to learn about human financial warfare. She made a mental note to update her resignation letter, then paused as another thought struck her. "Dave? Yeah? What happens when they figure out humans have been using projectile weapons for centuries?" Dave's grin should have been classified as a weapon of mass destruction. "Oh man, wait until they hear about guns. Jenkins is going to need a bigger bank account." "I hate you," Vkr'lak said without much heat. "Nah, you don't. Nobody hates Dave. Now, who wants to learn about this cool human thing called a hostile takeover?" As Zixtal raised all 4 hands enthusiastically, Vkr'lak decided that perhaps it was time to look into human investment strategies herself. After all, if you couldn't beat them, and recent evidence suggested you definitely couldn't, you might as well join them in profiting from the chaos. Somewhere in the distance, she could have sworn she heard the sound of ancient human wisdom being weaponized for fun and profit. It sounded surprisingly like a cash register. 6 months later. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Federation was in chaos, which, to be fair, wasn't particularly unusual these days. "Order! Order!" The chief administrator, a being composed primarily of organized light and bureaucratic frustration, tried to restore some semblance of control. "We will address these concerns one at a time." One at a time. The representative of the Silicon Consciousness gestured with several holographic appendages at the massive display screen. "Have you seen what's happening out there? The humans are systematically dismantling 10,000 years of weapons development." The screen showed various news feeds from across the galaxy. In one, a human teenager was demonstrating how to use something called a compound bow to a group of amazed Andromedans. In another, a retired human marine was explaining the concept of throw rock very hard to a species that had evolved past the need for physical weapons millennia ago. "It gets worse," the hive mind representative buzzed. "They're not just teaching primitive weapons techniques. They're... The translator struggled for a moment. "They're monetizing it!" The display shifted to show various trading floors across the galaxy. Markets were in turmoil as traditional energy weapon manufacturers saw their stocks plummet, while companies specializing in traditional human combat techniques soared. "I have it on good authority," a gaseous being floated forward, "that a human named Jenkins now owns controlling interest in 7 major defense contractors. 8, actually," a familiar voice called from the public gallery. All eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs turned to see Dave, still in his cargo shorts, and now wearing a t-shirt that read, I overthrew the galactic military-industrial complex, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. You! The Silicon Consciousness representative's holograms flickered with rage. This is your fault! Nah. Dave leaned back, putting his feet up on the railing in clear violation of at least 6 protocol regulations. This is what happens when you get so caught up in fancy technology that you forget the basics. By the way, has anyone here heard about this cool human thing called brass knuckles? The chamber erupted again. The chief administrator's organized light dimmed in despair. This is unprecedented, someone shouted. The humans are destroying our way of life! Actually, and now Zixtal stood up next to Dave, wearing what appeared to be a combination of traditional Catharan ceremonial armor and a black belt. They're improving it. Do you know how much money I've saved on quantum blade maintenance since switching to steel? Plus, he demonstrated a complex sword technique with all 4 arms. It's great exercise. But, the Silicon Consciousness was practically glitching. What about progress? Innovation? The future of combat technology? Oh, we're still doing that, Dave grinned. We're just making sure everyone knows the basics first. Speaking of which, he pulled out his communicator. Hey, Jenkins. Yeah, go ahead and release the video about human martial arts. You know, all of them. The chamber went silent. How many are there? Someone asked weakly. Well, Dave started counting on his fingers. There's karate, judo, kung fu, boxing, wrestling, muay thai, capoeira, krav maga, sistema, aikido, jiu-jitsu, both Japanese and Brazilian, not to mention all the historical European martial arts, African fighting styles, Native American combat techniques. The chief administrator's organized light flickered in what might have been a feint. And the best part? Dave's grin widened. We're offering franchise opportunities. Who wants to open the first intergalactic MMA academy? Every being in the chamber raised their appendages, tentacles, or energy fields. See? Dave nudged Zixtal. Told you nobody could resist a good business opportunity. Now, who wants to hear about this ancient human combat technique called pro wrestling? It's got excellent entertainment value. As the Grand Council devolved into a bidding war for franchise rights, Vkr'lak, newly promoted to head of human cultural integration, made another note in her ever-growing file labeled, Things Humans Have Ruined Forever, in a profitable way. Below energy weapons and above dignified combat, she added, galactic politics. It was, she had to admit, a pretty impressive list. Almost the end. Dave insisted on one more chapter. 1 year later. Earth, International Galactic Combat Sports Arena, formerly Madison Square Garden. The crowd was deafening, which, given that it included species that communicated through everything from subsonic rumbles to psychic screams, was quite an achievement. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of indeterminate or fluctuating gender, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Welcome to the first annual Mixed Martial Arts and Energy Weapons Championship. In the VIP box, Dave lounged in his signature cargo shorts, though he'd upgraded to a t-shirt that read, I started an intergalactic sports league and all I got was this multi-trillion credit empire. Next to him, Zixtal was attempting to eat popcorn with 4 hands, while wearing his new uniform as chief instructor of the Terran Catharan Combat Integration Program. You know, Dave mused, watching a Betelgeusian warrior attempt to combine quantum blade techniques with judo throws. I didn't actually expect it to go this far. Liar, Vkr'lak said from his other side. She'd finally given up on maintaining Catharan diplomatic dignity, and was wearing a foam finger on each of her 4 hands. This was your plan all along? Nah, the plan was just to win some bets and maybe teach a few aliens about proper sword fighting. This... He gestured at the arena, where a Silicon Consciousness hologram was now engaged in what appeared to be a kickboxing match with a sentient gas cloud. This is just bonus content. Speaking of bonuses, Jenkins materialized next to them, his holographic avatar flickering with barely contained glee. You might want to check the latest market updates. The new line of traditional human combat techniques for non-humanoid species just dropped. How's it doing? Let's just say you might want to buy another solar system. Cool, cool. Hey, Zixtal, want to go half-seas on Alpha Centauri? The former Grand Master nearly choked on his popcorn. I'm still paying off my investment in that chain of Brazilian jiu-jitsu dojos for gelatinous life forms. Your loss, Dave shrugged. Though speaking of losses, Vkr'lak, how's that thing we talked about coming along? The Catherine diplomat's antennae twitched in what had become her equivalent of an evil grin. The motion passes next week. As of the new galactic year, all military officers must demonstrate proficiency in at least one form of non-energy weapon combat. And who's providing the training programs? A recently established consortium of human martial arts instructors, working in partnership with various alien combat specialists. The controlling interest is held by a mysterious corporation that, coincidentally, seems to be registered to a human named Dave. What can I say? Dave spread his hands innocently. The galaxy needed to get back to basics. We just helped them do it in a profitable way. Below them, the silicon consciousness hologram had somehow managed to put the gas cloud in an armbar. The crowd went wild. You know what the funny part is? Dave continued, watching as medics rushed in to figure out how to check a gas cloud for injuries. We didn't even have to convince them. They convinced themselves. All those species so proud of their advanced technology, and all it took was one guy with a sharp piece of metal to make them realize they'd skipped some pretty important steps. And made yourself the wealthiest human in 17 star systems in the process. Vkr'lak noted. Hey, that was just a happy accident. Like that time I mentioned boxing to the hive mind crystalloids, and they started their own underground fight club. Speaking of which, he checked his communicator. Jenkins, how's that reality show coming along? Ultimate Crystal Fighter starts filming next month. We're already sold out of advertising slots through the next 3 seasons. See? Dave grinned as the next match began, a traditional Maori haka being performed by a group of methane-breathing invertebrates. This is what happens when you combine human combat techniques, alien enthusiasm, and good old-fashioned capitalism. Everyone wins. Except the energy weapon manufacturers, Zixtal pointed out. Nah, they're fine. They just had to adapt. Did you see the new line of quantum-enhanced nunchucks? Very impressive. Completely unnecessary, but impressive. Vkr'lak made another note in her ever-growing file, which had now expanded to include things humans have improved by making them unnecessarily complicated in an entertaining way. So, she asked, watching as the haka somehow transformed into a synchronized swimming routine, despite the lack of water. What's next? What other ancient human combat techniques are you going to introduce to an unsuspecting galaxy? Dave's grin should have been registered as a weapon of mass destruction in at least 3 star systems. Ever heard of professional wrestling? The resulting groan from his companions was drowned out by the roar of the crowd as the methane breathers began their interpretation of the Maori war dance, complete with energy weapon special effects and what appeared to be a choreographed laser light show. In the end, that was perhaps the greatest victory of all. Not that humans had proven their martial superiority, but that they'd managed to turn the entire galaxy into willing participants in their particular brand of combat-related chaos. And somewhere, in a private orbital training facility, a group of silicon consciousness holograms were secretly practicing something they'd discovered in their research of human combat techniques. They called it breakdancing. The galaxy would never be the same. The actual final "we're not kidding this time" end, unless Dave comes up with something else, which, let's be honest, he probably will.